Welcome to our 8 News Now Investigators show. I'm Vanessa Murphy, investigative reporter at KLAS TV. We have a look at some of our recent stories. You see our stories on 8 News Now on the web and online. We usually have an extended version in our web copy. This will be more of a conversation about what goes into those stories. Now, shortly, Kyle Payne will be joining me to talk about a recent story involving a local politician who he tried to get answers from. It's a story you don't want to miss. But first, David Charnes is here with a story about another local politician who was pulled over for alleged DUI.
Yeah, so Vanessa, thank you. And this is an opportunity for us to kind of talk about what we're working on, talk about how our stories come together, because that 90 seconds, or for Vanessa and I, maybe 3, 4, 5 minutes sometimes, you don't get the full behind the scenes, right? Yeah. So we're going to be talking about how things came together. So about 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, I got a text message from a good source of mine who said, "Did you hear about the senator's DUI arrest?" And I had not at that point. I was on vacation, but I immediately started digging. I was at an airport, and we just can't stop, and saw that Senator Edgar Flores faces a misdemeanor charge of DUI. So that's the first DUI. It's kind of more of a slap on the wrist here. It's not a huge consequence. Really, no one goes to jail for their first DUI. It's more like you pay a fine, you go to get a class, and you say, "I'm not going to do it again." But lo and behold, he was arrested, and obviously wanted to find out more. So I actually contacted him before I even knew the details of his arrest, and he and I had a phone call where he said he was really tired. And we hear that a lot, right? And people say that to the police all the time. "I'm really tired. I'm not impaired." He believed he was tired. He said that he fell asleep for a little bit at a stoplight. And then the video and the arrest report came out, which kind of told something a little different.
And we're going to play one of your stories from September 2025 here. Let's take a look.
Blood results for Democratic State Senator Edgar Flores came back at .082. That is right above the legal limit. That test taken hours after his arrest, 4 hours after his arrest. And experts say that means his blood alcohol level was higher when an officer's body camera took this video, because our body processes alcohol over time and that number goes down. We first reported Metro Police arrested Flores about a week and a half ago. Officers finding him asleep in his car at that northeast valley intersection, I should say. Now, we obtained this information through a records request to Metro. They also gave us this new video of Flores inside the Clark County Detention Center in the aftermath of that arrest back on September 12th. They say it shows Flores taking a breathalyzer before leaving the jail almost 12 hours after his arrest. And they believe it is that test that he is referring to in statements to us about passing a breathalyzer. Body camera video from his initial arrest shows him refusing a similar test before officers took him into custody. Now, after we broke this story this afternoon, a spokesperson for Flores' re-election campaign sent us this statement. It says, "Senator Flores and his legal team have not received any information or documentation from Metro. They remain confident that his name will be fully cleared and reaffirm his commitment to working with both the community and law enforcement to ensure transparency and accountability." Flores represents northeastern Clark County, and he's an attorney. Right now, he is involved in a federal lawsuit against Metro. That case is scheduled to go to trial next month. I'm David Charnes, 8 News Now.
And that was your story from September 2025. We're going to talk more about this, but let's take a quick break. Welcome back to our 8 News Now Investigator show. I'm Vanessa Murphy. David Charnes is joining me. So we just saw your story. I want to go back to when you received the tip and then you call him to get his side of the story. Always two sides to every story. You did your due diligence and you have this conversation with him. What was your sense at that point? Because you haven't seen the body cam yet.
Right. So that was a Sunday. He and I said, "I want to talk to you," obviously, and he said, "You can record this phone call." So I have a 25-minute recorded phone call with him. And I said, look, I don't know what happened because I haven't seen the body cam. I haven't seen the arrest report because we have to request all that from Metro. I should point out that the story you just saw, which was me presenting that story at that 11 o'clock newscast back on September 23rd, that we don't just get that. So we had to request the arrest report.
It takes time.
It takes time. We had to request the body cam. Metro's own policy is to not release the body cam when there's a pending criminal investigation. In this case, they decided to release the body cam because of what he was telling me, which we'll get to. But I said, look, I don't know if you were drunk. I'm not a phlebotomist. I'm not testing your blood. I wasn't there. So tell me why in court it says you face a misdemeanor DUI charge. And he said, David, I have a new baby. I'm exhausted. I go to the gym in the morning. I'm tired. And, that's a plausible response.
And what time was this about that he was pulled over?
It was at 3 a.m.
3 a.m. Okay. Now I want to fast forward to when you saw the body camera video.
When I saw the body camera video, I was honestly disappointed because you can tell that we've seen a lot of body cam video of drivers who are impaired. And when you and I are tired and we wake up in the morning or we wake up after a nap, you're going to get with it, right? There was never a point in that video. I mean, what we saw in that clip was, a couple 30, 45 seconds of a 20-minute long video. He never really wakes up, right? So to me, I was like, you just had this whole conversation with me where you say you're tired. And to me, I watched that video and you could have been impaired. And not only that, but it came out in the other documents that we were able to get that he was asleep at that intersection for like 10 minutes. And no matter if you're impaired or not, you could have hit someone. You got to be really vigilant driving in general, and then driving in Las Vegas is like I say a video game. It's a whole different thing. So I think with him, I was like, I'm kind of disappointed at this, and then the story kind of changed a little. Then
you get some more documentation.
We got the blood results,
and
so again we had been asking, how drunk are you, right? How there's a difference of being buzzed versus like sloshed, as I would say, and no one should be driving when they're impaired at all. But he was 0.082, which is
according to police,
which is right over the limit. Now, the thing with the 0.082 is that blood was taken 4 hours after we saw that video. So what police do is they surmise, okay, your body decreases blood alcohol level. We all do it a little differently, but it's generally hypothesized that you're above that limit at the time we arrested you, which is a crime.
Now, we generally keep our opinions out of our reporting, right? We try to stay balanced, innocent until proven guilty. But I think sometimes when someone accepts responsibility, it feels a little different. And I'm not asking you for your opinion. We don't even have to talk directly about him, but sometimes I made a mistake. I'm not going to do it again.
He said, look, I made a mistake. I shouldn't have been tired. But I don't think, and again, I haven't had this conversation with him, but I don't think he really knew he was impaired. I really don't. I think he thought I went out after, he said he had a soccer game with some friends. They went out. They had a beer. He says on the video, I had a 24-ounce beer. We don't really know much more than that, but the evidence that we've seen and what the facts that we've seen paint a little bit of a story. Now, he's not a bad guy, and he's not out there trying to kill people with his car, right? He appears to have made a bad decision. And I said to him when we spoke on the phone, I said, look, you're a lawmaker. You got, I didn't say it like, you got caught by the police, but I said, look, you got caught by an investigative reporter at 8 News Now who covers these cases like a hawk, because we all could be the pedestrian or the other car that you could have hit. And I said, so this is an opportunity for you to go back up to Carson City and find a way to use this as motivation to change some laws. And we'll see what happens.
Yeah, what now?
Well, he's not in court until January, because that's how long these processes take. The latest information that he and his spokespeople have said to us was that they hadn't seen the Metro stuff and they were reviewing it. But, this is going to go away and there won't be any consequence. And I will, put it on him for when lawmakers come back to say, look, what are you going to do about it? Because now one of you sees what this process is like, and maybe you'll actually do something.
If you're him, though, you would say, I am facing a consequence. My body camera video.
Yeah, I mean, it's embarrassing. It's super embarrassing. But look, I went out last weekend. I left my car here at the station right off the strip. I got an Uber to where I was going, and I Ubered home. And I came back the next day and got my freaking car. So it's not hard. And we hear people say it every day. And because this happened to who it happened to, it sets an example. And we need to keep having these conversations. And now he hasn't inserted himself into the conversation, and I will gladly have that conversation any day of the week.
So he is invited for an interview.
We are trying to speak with him more so to have a comprehensive conversation, not, why did you do it and all, because it doesn't matter. But I really want to see what happens and what does come out of it.
And initially, one thing I want to revisit, you had that phone conversation with him, and then you hear from his reps.
Yeah, we had the phone conversation with him, and then when the story came out, a representative for his reelection campaign said, well, you had an off-the-cuff conversation with him. Here's an official statement. And I said, no, I had a recorded statement with him that he, as a human being and as a person who knows, said, yeah, you can record it, and here's what happened. So it really bothers me, and it bothers all of us when, PR folks and communication folks try to wrangle it in, and I'm like, come on, no, we haven't played the conversation, and if that is something that is in our wheelhouse that could see the light of day one day, I'm hoping that he chooses to sit down with us and talk to us, and maybe that will give him clarity and help him move his case along. But he's not going to be in court until January, and technically the actual charge hasn't even been filed yet. And today is we're in mid-October. So,
David, thank you. So again, David reported on Edgar Flores, a local politician. This is still an active case. Shortly, Kyle Payne will be joining me, but let's take a quick break. Welcome back to our 8 News Now Investigators show. I'm Vanessa Murphy. Right now, Kyle Payne is joining me. Kyle reported on a local politician who essentially refused to give you some important answers. Just briefly introduce us to this story, and then we'll play your report.
Okay, so Henderson, which I cover extensively, had an election in 2024, November. Monica Larson unseated the incumbent Dan Shaw, who I also caught up with on a camera when he wouldn't speak with me. And that was an award-winning piece, and that his opponents went after him hard. And Monica Larson surprised everyone in the primary and went on to win and beat Dan Shaw. And that was a nasty election. And when we met her for the first time in December, we had a wonderful time. And so much so that, I'd done my homework on her. I read her bio. I didn't go through the tell me about yourself questions that we might normally ask. And then when she took office, she had a little bit of an about face and seemed to be doing some things that weren't in line with what she had campaigned on. So we looked into her a little bit. I looked into her. And the first thing was to see about her professional background. And it seemed that it took me only one stroke of the mouse to find out it didn't appear she had a license to practice psychology, and she often refers to herself as a clinical and forensic psychologist by trade. So we started asking. And we were met with resistance, which we often are from anyone involved in the upper levels of government in Henderson, from the mayor on down. And when I did that, I knew that I was going to have to approach her in some way. And a wrinkle was that over the last few months, she started being escorted by 1 or 2 bodyguards, We could never figure out why. We continued to ask. We asked the city, who said they weren't paying for it, and we couldn't get any further information. And so I knew not only did I need to approach her at some point in public to say what's going on, but that we may have some interference from a third party, which we don't often get from, I could see if I was trying to interview the president and the Secret Service would get away from him, I probably would. But for an elected official to not say no comment and had someone physically restrain me was a new one.
So let's take a look at Kyle's report, which aired in October 2025.
Monica, we've been trying to interview you. Interviewing Henderson City Councilwoman Monica Larson, sir, you can't touch me, was not always this difficult. Did you like that? Yeah, I did. All right. We were all smiles when we ended our first and only interview together in December after she ran for office and won. Would it surprise you if it got ugly?
Oh, it wouldn't surprise me the slightest bit.
Larson saying she expected to challenge a voting bloc on the council that often showed all but one councilperson, Ward 3's Carrie Cox, voting together.
It has been well known that there's usually the three councilmen and the mayor always vote in lockstep.
That was a couple weeks before she was sworn onto the Henderson City Council.
Are you ready to take the oath of office?
There's been a narrative that's been spun that I'm in alignment with another councilwoman.
And immediately distanced herself from Cox only a couple of months.
Thank you, Carrie, you've had your turn. Thank you, Carrie, you've had your turn.
For Larson's relationship with Cox to deteriorate, not only on the dais at city council meetings, but on social media as well. Larson cropping out Cox. This is the actual photo op, and here's how Larson shows it on her Facebook. In June, we asked Larson for an interview about disunity on the council. Larson ignored me. The city told me no twice.
There's been numerous accidents.
Traffic accidents and public safety, two of the big issues on which Larson based her campaign. Another topic on which the city and Larson remained silent. Court records showing one of Larson's own constituents tried, albeit unsuccessfully, to get a protective order against her. This Henderson Police Incident Report, which the 8 News Now investigators first discovered earlier this year, says Larson got into an online feud with a man on her neighborhood watch. It apparently got personal. The report says Larson said a, quote, disgruntled man baby slandered her family, and that Larson went online posting more about the man and his wife, revealing personal information about them.
Monica, it's Kyle from Channel 8. We were trying to catch up with you to have some... Excuse me, sorry, I'm trying to ask the Councilwoman some questions.
Which brings us to my run-in with Monica Larson and, of all things, her bodyguard, the man dressed in black. When we caught up with her last month to ask questions about her background, yet another topic the city refuses to discuss, and Larson issuing this unhelpful statement, quote, I choose not to address these irrelevant questions brought forth for political gain by others, for the purpose of advancing their deceptive agenda and harming others.
Well, I'm a clinical and forensic psychologist by trade.
There's Dr. Monica Larson on the YouTube show Vegas Voice on the campaign trail in 2024, telling the host,
From the forensic side, I treated sex offenders for the state of California to prevent recidivism and to prevent them from harming someone else.
and again here on another YouTube show called The Pulse.
I am a clinical and forensic psychologist by trade, but I retired. And what that means, because sometimes people aren't quite sure.
But what we aren't quite sure of is whether she's a psychologist at all, though her story stays consistent on her campaign webpage and in these interviews.
I used to treat sex offenders for the state of California.
California confirms that part. She was a volunteer with the state sex offender management program back in 2014 and 15. But it seems she's not and never was a licensed psychologist, despite what she says on her Facebook page, and on another Facebook page, and on her X, and of course, those YouTube videos.
Well, I'm a clinical and forensic psychologist by trade. I am a clinical and forensic psychologist by trade.
The California Department of Consumer Affairs website saying instead she was a psychological associate, which they say is a precursor to being a psychologist. A department spokesman telling the 8 News Now investigators, quote, the California Board of Psychology doesn't have a record of anyone with that name being granted a license to practice as a psychologist in California. And even Larson's own spokeswoman, seen here, saying everything but the words licensed psychologist, telling the 8 News Now investigators in a statement, quote, Larson completed her extensive academic studies and successfully defended her dissertation, earning her title as doctor. that she's retired from psychology, and that my attempt to, quote, invalidate Dr. Larson's academic credentials, slander her name, and stalking her is continued harassment.
We have just a question. We want to know if you have,
But you decide who's doing the harassing.
we want to know if you have a license to practice psychology and why you have this bodyguard reaching after me. Monica, could you please answer my questions? This is unacceptable.
Yet it seemed perfectly acceptable to Larson, who dove into her car here head first to start it and had her muscle hold me off while she made her way to the driver's side. A short walk, but a long way to go for a politician to avoid answering a simple question.
Monica, are you a licensed psychologist in any state? Councilwoman, could you please answer me? Councilwoman?
Have a nice day, Kyle.
On this day, Larson had the one guard, who was more than enough to keep me away. But over the last several months, we noticed Larson accompanied by one or two men, seen here like at city council meetings, at luncheons, and even at a grade school. It's another topic the city won't discuss, except to say Henderson isn't paying for anybody's personal security. And Larson won't say why she needs protection to begin with, or who's paying for it.
Sir, who's paying you? Does the campaign pay you or does Monica pay you personally?
Or why she needs security or anyone to stand in the way of her answering our questions.
Monica, you sure you don't have anything you want to say?
Obviously, no one should put their hands on a reporter or anyone else for that matter. Did that sort of shake you up, or what happened there?
We knew she would be with someone, and that did not stop me. I don't think that I'm a threat to anybody on so many levels, not the least of which when I show up to do my job with a microphone in one hand and a reporter's notebook in the other.
To an elected official.
Right.
To an elected official.
Right, and she knew that we were going to find her somewhere, and I can only surmise that how calm she was walking to the car, and then the way she dove into her car to start the car, like they had arranged a plan for this, I think, and she handled it well. And then the only thing she said to me was "Have a good day," when she knew she had escaped the possibility of answering any questions. But I don't understand why we needed to do that, any of that, because she could have just said no comment, and I could have said, but I didn't find any proof, and she could have said the record speaks for itself or whatever she wanted, and instead she...
And Kyle, I think it's important to let viewers know this wasn't a day of, let me just randomly try to talk to Monica Larson. This was weeks, or how long was this? You kept asking for an interview with her.
So, for better or worse, it started in June, I would say. So it went for 3 or 4 months, and that's a long time even for me. And but mostly because I couldn't believe that it was as easy as going to the California website to disprove her comments that she's a psychologist, a clinical forensic psychologist by trade, she says. I don't know. I thought about adding a linguist to this story to say, is by trade a thing?
Yeah.
And I kind of still wanted to, but that was a 6-minute long story. We could have done it, and there was a part 2.
And first, I do want you to get to the statement she released after your story aired, correct?
Right. Shortly after both stories aired, we actually did not get this statement. It was posted online and sent to the other media. This is from Dr. Monica Larson. Recent media coverage has created misleading information regarding my professional background in the field of psychology. I would like to provide clarity to the public and correct some of the misimpressions that have circulated. I hold a doctorate in clinical psychology from the Chicago School of Professional Psychology and a master's degree in forensic psychology. My graduate training and clinical work were conducted under the supervision of a licensed psychologist in California, in full compliance with state regulations and psychological associates. Now, to that point, you could have taken that from my script, because I said all that almost to the word from her other bio online. And then she continues, at no time have I ever represented myself on social media, in writing, or in any public forum as a licensed psychologist, in bold. Any suggestion to the contrary is simply inaccurate. My professional references to clinical and forensic psychology have always described my education and area of expertise, not a claim of active licensure to independently practice. Well, we didn't say she independently practiced. What we said was she refers to herself with no qualifications on social media as clinical forensic psychologist. Psychologist requires a license. So if she didn't say licensed psychologist who practices and sees patients for money, you don't have to. If you say you're a licensed psychologist, I make the inference or the jump that you have to have a license, and she apparently does not, as evidenced by the long statement from her representative who indicates anything but a license.
And I think it's important to mention this is not about Kyle Payne. This is not about Channel 8. We are trying to get answers for constituents.
Right. And I believe if she had said, "Oh, this is a misunderstanding. You don't get it. You don't know what I'm trying to say," and she said that beforehand, I might have had a minute-long story. I probably wouldn't have had a story. I would have said, "Oh, this is a little strange discrepancy. She says one thing and meant another," but I wouldn't have had to go find her. I wouldn't have had to have done the extensive digging that I did. I talked to boards in 2 states. I talked to experts. I did the best I could. And it's not about me. I mean, often it is. But in this case, no, you're right.
And you also have the interesting background that not many reporters have. You're an attorney, so you might understand legal documents better than some of us. You don't take it lightly.
I don't take it lightly. But more importantly, to that end, I also felt like I graduated from law school and I passed the bar exam in Massachusetts. And therefore, I'm not only someone who is let's say by using the same language, I'm a lawyer by trade, if that's a thing, but I'm also a lawyer because I passed the bar. I couldn't say I'm a lawyer without my bar card, my license to practice law. And I couldn't qualify it by saying, well, I worked under the supervision of someone else and I didn't really go to court for anybody. So that was offensive to me on a professional level.
What now?
Now we are continuing to dig into this particular politician, and I have always been looking into all of Henderson because it just seems like nobody ever wants to talk there, and I'd like to know what it is they might have to say.
More transparency, more accountability.
Yes, and there's 2 elections coming up, another city council election, and the mayor is being challenged. So between now and November, I think there will be more stories.
It's also a good reminder for us that we need to do a better job of checking people's backgrounds leading up to the elections, which we try to, right? But we have many elections here, many politicians, people running for office. But it's a good reminder.
It is. And to your point, like I said, the surprise win in the primary led everyone who was against her opponent to her, and no one said, all right, let's figure this out. Let's vet her. I think there was some vetting, but obviously they seemed to have taken her at her word for a lot of this. And now we know that at least there are questions.
Kyle, good work.
Thank you.
Thanks for doing this.
Nice talking with you.
Thank you for joining our 8 News Now Investigator Show. You can watch part 2 of Kyle Payne's report there at 8newsnow.com. You can also file the work of David Charnes, George Knapp, and myself at the same place. Thanks again.